The Dragon's Guardian. Marcus Wade had seen enough blood and death in the frontier wars to last several lifetimes. Now, at 43, his medical kit was supposed to be for treating minor injuries at his remote outpost on Thessaly Prime, not saving the life of what appeared to be a creature of legend. The dragon hatchling lay before him, its crystalline scales reflecting the dim light of his survey lamp. Each labored breath sent ripples of color through its transparent body, purple, blue, then a dangerous red that Marcus recognized as a sign of severe trauma. The creature couldn't have been more than a few days old, yet its wounds told a story of violence that made his hands shake with barely controlled anger. "Easy there, little one," he whispered, carefully cleaning a particularly nasty gash along its wing membrane. The dragon's eyes, faceted like diamonds but warm with intelligence, tracked his every movement. His medical scanner beeped steadily, displaying readings that defied everything he knew about xenobiology. The ruins around them groaned, ancient stones settling in the planet's perpetual twilight. Marcus had come here following rumors of pre-collapse technology, hoping to find something to trade for better medical supplies. Instead, he'd found something that would change the course of galactic history. A soft chirp drew his attention back to the hatchling. It had lifted its head slightly, crystal horns catching the light. Marcus smiled despite himself. "You're doing great, just a few more minutes." The dragon responded by gently headbutting his hand, leaving a trail of sparkles in the air. The moment shattered as his perimeter sensors screamed. Multiple contacts, moving fast through the ruins. Marcus's military training kicked in instantly. He scooped up the dragon, ignoring its surprised squeak, and ducked behind a fallen column just as plasma fire lit up the chamber. "Come out, human," a voice called, its artificial translation making it sound like grinding glass. "The hatchling belongs to the Crystal Dominion. This need not end in violence." Marcus checked his old service pistol, 6 shots left, not nearly enough for what his scanner showed were 8 heavily armed hostiles. The dragon in his arms trembled, but not with fear. Anger radiated from its tiny form, and the air around them began to crystallize. "I'm a medic," Marcus called back, buying time as he studied the chamber's layout. "The hatchling is injured. Moving it now could be fatal." A harsh laugh echoed through the ruins. "Its fate is not your concern. The Dominion has specialists who will ensure its survival. Your interference ends now." Marcus's jaw tightened. He recognized the tone, the same one used by officers who saw soldiers as expendable resources. Looking down at the dragon, he made a decision that would reshape his life and the galaxy itself. "What's your name, little one?" he whispered. The dragon's response wasn't in words, but in feelings and colors that bloomed in his mind. Dawn light through crystal, the song of stars, the dance of Aurora. "Aurora," he said softly. "That's what I'll call you." The hatchling Aurora chirped in approval, then her eyes locked onto something behind them. Marcus spun, raising his pistol, but he needn't have bothered. Where their pursuers had breached the chamber, massive crystal formations now erupted from the ground, sealing the entrance. "Well," Marcus breathed, watching Aurora preen proudly despite her injuries. "Looks like we're in this together now." He quickly gathered his medical supplies and the few artifacts he'd collected. The crystal barrier wouldn't hold forever, and there were other ways into the ruins. As he secured Aurora in his jacket, creating a makeshift sling, she projected another image into his mind. A vast crystal city floating among the stars, its spires gleaming with power and ancient knowledge. "That's your home?" he asked. Aurora's mental response carried sadness and determination. Marcus nodded grimly. "Don't worry, whatever's happening, whatever you're running from, I've got your back." As they made their way deeper into the ruins, Marcus's scanner picked up more signatures converging on their position. The Crystal Dominion wasn't the only faction interested in Aurora, and the ancient stones around them held secrets that some would kill to protect. But Marcus Wade had spent his life saving others, and he wasn't about to stop now, even if his newest patient happened to be a crystal dragon with powers that defied explanation. Aurora snuggled closer, her scales harmonizing with his heartbeat, and Marcus smiled. Sometimes the greatest adventures began with the simplest acts of kindness. He just hoped they'd live long enough to see where this one led. Hunters and allies. The maintenance tunnels beneath the ruins hummed with ancient power, casting strange shadows as Marcus and Aurora made their way through the labyrinth. 3 days had passed since their escape from the Crystal Dominion's forces, and Aurora's wounds were healing with remarkable speed. The tiny dragon now rode proudly on Marcus's shoulder, her crystalline form pulsing with soft light that matched her improving mood. "Another patrol," Marcus muttered, checking his scanner. He'd modified it to detect the unique energy signatures of Crystal Dominion tech, a trick that had saved their lives twice already. Aurora's mental touch brushed his consciousness, sharing an image of a hidden passage to their left. The dragon's knowledge of the ruins' architecture seemed instinctive, as if the very stones recognized her presence. They slipped through a narrow crack in the wall just as heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor they'd vacated. Marcus held his breath, feeling Aurora tense against his neck. The patrol passed, their crystalline armor clicking against the metal floor. "Good call," he whispered to Aurora, who preened smugly. Her personality had begun emerging more strongly as she recovered, curious, proud, and possessing a dry sense of humor that frequently caught him off guard. She'd taken to reorganizing his medical supplies by color rather than function, apparently finding his system lacking in aesthetic appeal. A sudden explosion above shook dust from the ceiling. Aurora chirped in alarm, sharing a rapid series of images, more hunters, but different from the Dominion. These ones carried weapons that could disrupt crystal formations, tech that shouldn't exist outside the highest levels of galactic security. "Time to move," Marcus said, but before they could retreat, a section of the ceiling collapsed. Through the dust emerged a figure that made both of them freeze. The woman wore adaptive camouflage armor covered in archaeological tools and scanning equipment. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, and a nasty scar ran along her jaw. Most notably, she carried herself with the confident grace of someone who knew exactly how dangerous they were. "Well," she said, lowering her plasma rifle, "you're not what I expected to find down here." Her eyes fixed on Aurora, widening slightly. "Though that explains a lot." Marcus's pistol was already aimed at her head. "Back off slowly, and we can all walk away from this." The woman smiled, and to his surprise, holstered her weapon. "Name's Rook, Dr. Alina Rook, and I'm probably the only person within 50 light-years who can help you understand what you're carrying on your shoulder." Aurora's mental touch carried curiosity rather than fear. She shared an image with Marcus, the woman standing before a vast library of crystal tablets, studying their ancient knowledge. A memory? A possibility. With Aurora's visions, it wasn't always clear. "The Dominion's getting desperate," Rook continued, brushing dust from her armor. "They've hired the Obsidian Chorus, crystal tech specialists who make the regular hunters look like amateurs. You've got maybe 2 hours before they crack the ruins' defensive systems." Marcus kept his weapon steady. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I've spent 20 years studying the Crystal Wars and that little one you're protecting," Rook gestured to Aurora. "She's not just any hatchling. She's a resonance dragon, the first born in over a millennium. The Dominion doesn't want her dead. They want to use her to activate something they found in the deep vault, something that should stay buried." Aurora's scales flickered with recognition, projecting images of vast machines and cities of living crystal. But there was fear there too, a deep ancestral memory of destruction on an unimaginable scale. A distant explosion punctuated Rook's warning. She pulled out a holocom, displaying a map of the ruins' lower levels. "I've got a secure facility 3 levels down. We can talk safely there, and I can show you what we're really dealing with." Marcus felt Aurora's gentle mental nudge. The dragon had already made up her mind. She trusted this strange archaeologist, or at least trusted that they needed the knowledge she offered. Still. "First sign of trouble," Marcus warned, finally lowering his weapon. "We're gone." Rook's smile turned grim. "Trust me, if I wanted to harm either of you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Dominion's crystal tech can track her signature. My lab is shielded. It's your best chance." They followed Rook through a series of increasingly complex security measures, biometric scanners, quantum locks, and crystal wards that hummed in response to Aurora's presence. The dragon watched everything with intense interest, occasionally sharing fragments of understanding with Marcus. These defenses were ancient, predating even the Crystal Wars. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that looked more like a military command center than an archaeological site. Holographic displays showed real-time movements of Dominion forces throughout the ruins, while crystal matrices along the walls processed data at impossible speeds. "Welcome to Project Oracle," Rook announced, activating a central display. For 20 years, we've been preparing for this moment, the return of the resonance dragons and the choice that would follow. The display showed a familiar crystal city, the same one Aurora had shared in her vision. But this version was different. It was a weapon, a key to unlocking powers that had nearly torn the galaxy apart eons ago. The Dominion found the codes to reactivate the old Crystal Tech weapons platforms, Rook explained. All they need is a resonance dragon to power them. That's why they're hunting Aurora. She's not just a hatchling, she's the last hope for preventing another crystal war. Aurora left Marcus's shoulder, floating to the center of the room. Her scales blazed with purpose as she projected a series of images, armies of crystal constructs, worlds transformed into weapons, and through it all, a sense of profound responsibility. Marcus watched his small companion with growing concern. She was so young to bear such a burden, yet she faced it with determination that put many adults to shame. "What's our next move?" he asked Rook. The archaeologist's response was cut off by a massive explosion that shook the entire chamber. Warning signals flashed across multiple displays. "They're here," Rook announced grimly. "The Obsidian Chorus found us faster than I expected. Hope you're ready for a fight because we've got about 10 minutes before they breach this level." Aurora returned to Marcus's shoulder, her mental touch carrying both fear and resolve. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The choice that Rook mentioned loomed before them, but first, they had to survive the next 10 minutes. The Crystal Legacy. The Obsidian Chorus lived up to their reputation. They came through the walls like living shadows, their crystal tech armor absorbing energy from the lab's defenses and turning it against them. Marcus crouched behind an overturned console, Aurora tucked safely against his chest, while Rook coordinated their defense from her command station. "Secondary shields failing," Rook shouted over the chaos. Her fingers danced across crystalline interfaces, redirecting power. "Marcus, get to the vault. The entrance is behind the main archive." Aurora suddenly stiffened in Marcus's arms, her scales blazing with urgent light. She projected a warning. The chorus wasn't just trying to capture her. They were after something specific in Rook's lab, something that resonated with Aurora's own crystal matrix. A blast of concentrated energy nearly took Marcus's head off as he sprinted toward the archive. Behind him, Rook's automated defenses engaged, filling the air with streaks of plasma fire. The chorus moved with unnatural precision, their crystalline forms shifting and adapting to each new threat. "This way," Rook appeared beside them, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. She pressed her hand against a seemingly solid wall, and a hidden door materialized. The vault's shielding should hold them for a few minutes. They rushed inside as the door sealed behind them. The vault was a massive chamber filled with artifacts suspended in stasis fields. At its center stood a crystalline pedestal that immediately caught Aurora's attention. The young dragon squirmed free from Marcus's grip and flew directly to it. "No, wait," Rook called, but it was too late. The moment Aurora touched the pedestal, the entire chamber transformed. Crystal formations erupted from the walls, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with living light. Marcus watched in awe as his small companion's form began to glow, her scales resonating with the ancient technology around them. "It's responding to her," Rook breathed, checking readings on her portable scanner. "This shouldn't be possible. The crystal matrices were supposed to be dormant for at least another century." Aurora's consciousness brushed against Marcus's mind, but this time the connection was different, deeper, vast as space itself. He saw through her eyes, networks of crystal technology spanning galaxies, ancient wars that reshaped worlds, and a terrible choice made by her ancestors to seal away powers that threatened to destroy everything. "The resonance dragons weren't just powerful," Rook explained, her voice filled with wonder. "They were keys to the entire crystal network. The ancients built their civilization around dragons like Aurora, using their natural ability to harmonize with and control crystal technology. But something went wrong. The vault shook as the Obsidian Chorus began their assault on the outer doors. Aurora remained connected to the pedestal, her small form now floating several feet off the ground as streams of data and energy flowed through her. "The Crystal Wars," Marcus said, understanding dawning. "The dragons didn't just disappear, they chose to." Rook nodded grimly. When the crystal tech began to be used as weapons, the dragons realized their very existence was a threat to the galaxy. They went into hibernation, sealing away their eggs in time-locked vaults. Aurora isn't just the first to hatch, she's the first to choose a side. The vault's defenses screamed warnings as the chorus breached the outer layer. Aurora's eyes snapped open, glowing with internal fire. She separated from the pedestal and returned to Marcus's shoulder, but she was different now. Knowledge and power radiated from her small form, yet she nuzzled against his neck with the same trust she'd shown since he'd found her. "They're not just after Aurora anymore," Rook said, checking her weapons. "That pedestal contained the master key to the entire crystal network, now that she's bonded with it." "She is the key," Marcus finished. He felt Aurora's agreement through their strengthened bond. She showed him more, vast fleets of crystal ships hidden in dimensional pockets, waiting to be awakened. In the wrong hands, such power could devastate civilizations. The inner door began to glow red as the chorus applied their energy weapons. They had minutes at most. "There's another way out," Rook said, moving to a far corner of the vault. "An emergency transit system the ancients built. It'll take us to the one place the Dominion fears to follow, the Dragon's Cradle." Aurora's excitement spiked at the mention of the location. Images flooded Marcus's mind. A hidden sanctuary where the last of the great dragons had gone to sleep, waiting for the day when the galaxy would be ready for their return. "How do we activate it?" Marcus asked, drawing his pistol as the door's crystal structure began to crack. Rook smiled grimly. "We don't, she does." Aurora lifted off from Marcus's shoulder, her small form glowing with newfound purpose. The air around them began to crystallize as she accessed powers that had lain dormant for millennia. Through their bond, Marcus felt her determination and her fear. She was still so young, yet the fate of galaxies now rested on her choices. "I'm with you," he told her softly. "Whatever comes next." The door exploded inward as Aurora's power reached its peak. The last thing Marcus saw before the crystal transit field engulfed them was the frustrated faces of the obsidian chorus, realizing their prize had slipped through their fingers once again. The dragon's cradle awaited, and with it, the truth about Aurora's destiny and the choice that would reshape the galaxy forever. Empire's shadow. The dragon's cradle defied description. Suspended in the heart of a dying star, protected by layers of crystal technology that bent both space and time, the ancient sanctuary pulsed with the combined power of 1,000 sleeping dragons. Marcus, Aurora, and Rook materialized on a platform of living crystal that shifted and reformed beneath their feet. "By all the stars," Rook whispered, her scientific detachment cracking at the sight before them. Vast crystalline chambers stretched in every direction, each containing the shadowy form of a dragon in stasis. Their combined energies created aurora-like waves that rippled through the structure. Aurora took flight, her small form darting through the ethereal light. Through their bond, Marcus felt her mix of joy and sorrow, joy at finding her ancestral home, sorrow at seeing her kind frozen in endless sleep. She led them deeper into the sanctuary, past chambers that hadn't seen conscious life in millennia. "The records weren't clear about what we'd find here," Rook said, consulting her scanner. "The dragon's cradle was more myth than history, but this," she gestured at the endless rows of stasis chambers, "this is beyond anything we imagined." A distant boom shook the sanctuary, making the crystal surfaces vibrate in harmony. Aurora projected an urgent warning: they weren't alone. Somehow, the crystal dominion had followed them. "Impossible," Rook muttered, checking defensive readings. "The transit system was supposed to be untraceable." "Unless they had help," Marcus said grimly. He'd noticed something odd about the way the obsidian chorus had found them so quickly in the ruins. Someone's been feeding them information. Aurora suddenly screeched, her scales flashing danger signals. A figure stepped from behind a crystal column, Commander Vale of the Crystal Dominion, his armor seamlessly integrated with crystal tech that shouldn't have existed. "Impressive deduction," Vale said, his voice distorted by crystalline harmonics. "Dr. Rook has been most helpful, though not always willingly." He turned to Rook, whose face had gone pale. "The tracking crystal we implanted during your last interrogation worked perfectly." Marcus's pistol was up in an instant, but Vale merely laughed. "Please, your weapons can't harm me. The Obsidian Chorus isn't just a military unit, we're the next stage of evolution." Crystal tech merged with organic life, guided by the wisdom of the Dominion. Aurora landed on Marcus's shoulder, her small form trembling not with fear but with rage. Through their bond, Marcus saw what she saw, the corruption of everything her ancestors had created, twisted into weapons and tools of oppression. The dragons went asleep for a reason, Marcus said, keeping his weapon trained on Vale. They saw how their gifts could be misused. They were cowards, Vale spat. They had the power to reshape reality itself and they chose to hide. But now, he gestured and crystal formations began growing from his armor, spreading across the chamber floor. Now we'll wake them, all of them, under our control. Aurora launched herself from Marcus's shoulder, her small form blazing with light. She intercepted Vale's crystal growth, her own power creating a barrier of pure resonance. The clash of energies sent shockwaves through the sanctuary. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Rook shouted over the crystal song. "The dragons can't be controlled. They chose sleep rather than risk their power being misused." Vale's laughter turned maniacal. "We've had centuries to study the crystal tech to understand its true potential. Your little dragon isn't the only one who can access the network." His armor began to transform, growing into a crystalline exoskeleton that towered over them. "The Dominion will have its weapon, one way or another." The sanctuary's defenses activated, ancient systems responding to the threat. But Vale's corrupted crystal tech began infecting them, turning the dragon's cradle's own protections against it. Through it all, Aurora maintained her barrier, protecting Marcus and Rook from the chaos of competing crystal energies. "The stasis fields are destabilizing," Rook warned, checking readings on her scanner. "If he wakes the dragons like this, corrupted by his tech, there's no telling what could happen." Marcus watched as Aurora strained against Vale's assault. She was powerful, but she was still so young, fighting against centuries of corrupted crystal technology. Through their bond, he felt her determination and a desperate plan forming in her mind. "No," he whispered, understanding what she intended. "There has to be another way." Aurora's mental touch was gentle but firm. She showed him the truth: the dragon's cradle wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a nexus point, a place where the entire crystal network could be reset, purged of corruption. But the price. Vale's crystal exoskeleton had nearly reached the ceiling, tendrils of corrupted tech spreading to the nearest stasis chambers. "You can't stop this," he crowed. "The age of dragons ended in weakness. The Dominion's age begins in power." Aurora looked back at Marcus one last time, her crystalline eyes filled with love and determination. Then she streaked upward, her small form accelerating until she was nothing but a point of light. She was aiming for the heart of the sanctuary, where the crystal network's main controls pulsed with the combined power of 1,000 sleeping dragons. "Aurora, wait," Marcus called, but he knew she wouldn't. She had made her choice. The sanctuary trembled as a new song began to rise, not the corrupted harmonies of Vale's tech, but something older, purer. Aurora had reached the control nexus, and through their bond, Marcus felt the weight of history shifting on a single moment of sacrifice. The true power of a resonance dragon was about to be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same. Guardian's promise. The heart of the dragon's cradle erupted in crystalline fire as Aurora merged with the ancient control nexus. Marcus felt their bonds stretch and transform, becoming something vast and terrible and beautiful. Through it, he experienced everything she did, the full weight of draconic knowledge flooding her consciousness, the corrupted crystal tech fighting against her presence, and the desperate gamble she was about to attempt. "What's happening?" Rook shouted over the rising crystal song. Her scanner had overloaded, the display cracking under the pressure of competing energies. Commander Vale's massive crystalline form staggered as his control over the sanctuary systems began to slip. "No, the network is mine." His armor pulsed with corrupted power as he tried to maintain his connection to the crystal tech. But Aurora wasn't fighting him, not directly. Through their bond, Marcus understood her plan. She wasn't trying to destroy the crystal network or even purge its corruption. She was doing something far more fundamental. She was waking up her ancestors, but not in the way Vale had intended. The stasis chambers began to glow, one by one, as Aurora channeled her power through the sanctuary systems. But instead of physical forms emerging, streams of pure crystal energy poured forth. The sleeping dragons had evolved during their long rest, becoming beings of pure resonance. "She's not just accessing the network," Rook realized, eyes wide. "She's becoming it." Vale screamed in rage and frustration as his corrupted tech began to crystallize, transformed by the pure dragon energy now flooding the sanctuary. His massive form started to crack, ancient crystal patterns emerging from beneath the corruption. Marcus felt Aurora's consciousness expand, encompassing the entire dragon's cradle. She was everywhere and nowhere, her physical form dissolving into pure energy as she accepted her true inheritance. Through their bond, she shared the truth she had discovered. The dragons hadn't gone to sleep to hide from their power, but to evolve beyond the need for physical form. The Crystal Wars taught us the danger of power bound to flesh. Aurora's voice echoed through the sanctuary, no longer the chirp of a hatchling, but the resonant tones of an ancient being. We chose to become something more. Vale's crystal exoskeleton shattered as the last of his corrupted tech succumbed to the transformation. He fell to his knees, his armor now reflecting the pure light of awakened dragon energy. What have you done? What my ancestors intended, Aurora replied. Her consciousness touched his, and through their bond, Marcus felt her compassion even for her enemy. The crystal network was never meant to be a weapon, it was meant to be a bridge. The sanctuary shifted and transformed around them as thousands of dragon consciousnesses awakened fully. Marcus watched in awe as the physical structure of the dragon's cradle began to merge with space itself, becoming a nexus of pure crystal energy that spread throughout the galaxy. But even as Aurora's power grew, Marcus felt their personal bond beginning to fade. She was becoming something beyond physical form, beyond the small dragon he had rescued and grown to love. Tears streamed down his face as he realized what this meant. "You're leaving," he whispered. Aurora's consciousness focused on him one last time, her love and gratitude flowing through their weakening connection. "Not leaving," she corrected gently. "Transforming, and you'll transform with me if you choose." Marcus blinked. "What?" "The bridge goes both ways," Aurora explained. "Humanity's greatest strength is its ability to adapt, to become more than what it was. The crystal network needs guardians who understand both organic life and pure energy. Who better than the one who showed a lost dragon hatchling the power of compassion?" She offered him a choice: remain as he was, or join her in becoming something new, a bridge between the physical and crystal realms, between humanity and dragonkind. Rook stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with awe. The legends never mentioned this possibility. "Because it hadn't been discovered yet," Aurora replied. "Each age brings new potential. This is ours." Marcus looked at his hands, then at the streams of crystal energy that had once been sleeping dragons. He thought of his life as a medic, of all the times he'd worked to bridge the gap between life and death, between suffering and healing. Perhaps this wasn't so different. "Will it hurt?" he asked, managing a small smile. Aurora's amusement rippled through the sanctuary. "Change always does, but we'll face it together." Marcus took a deep breath and stepped forward. Crystal energy began to swirl around him as Aurora's consciousness embraced his. He felt his physical form beginning to shift, becoming something between flesh and crystal, between human and dragon. "The crystal dominion will return," Vale warned, though his voice had lost its menace. "Others will try to claim this power." "Let them come," Marcus said, his voice now carrying harmonics of crystal song. "They'll find guardians waiting." The transformation completed, and Marcus understood at last what Aurora had known all along. The age of sleeping dragons was over, but something new was beginning, an age of bridges and guardians, of harmony between crystal and flesh, energy and matter. As his consciousness expanded to join Aurora's in the crystal network, Marcus reflected that it had all started with a simple choice: to help an injured dragon hatchling. Sometimes the greatest adventures, the most profound changes, began with a single act of kindness. The dragon's cradle pulsed one final time, and the sanctuary transformed into a nexus of pure crystal energy, spreading throughout the galaxy like a new constellation. Within it, Marcus and Aurora began their work as guardians, protecting the bridge between worlds and watching over all those who, like them, dared to become something more than they were born to be. And somewhere in the space between crystal and starlight, a small dragon's laughter echoed through eternity.